In this video, we will learn about transaction factories in MultiversX JavaScript SDK. We will send different token types. If you haven't seen the previous video, please do because you will learn about the setup. We won't focus on that here, but we'll reuse the code in new examples. First, let's see how to send native EGLD using the transaction factory. Let's create a separate file for it, and I will also make a separate one for each token type. What is a transaction factory? Well, it is a MultiversX SDK helper for preparing transactions for further broadcast. It simplifies things from the development experience point of view. But of course, you can also send native tokens like in the first video. Later, you'll see why using the transaction factory is a more convenient way to transfer tokens. Okay, let's focus on the native token transfers. I'll reuse the helpers from our setup.js file here because we always need these for proper transaction broadcast. So I will need the user setup, transaction computer for serialization, and signer for signing the transaction. Now the new stuff. I will need two new helpers, the transactions factory config and transfer transactions factory. You can change the network on which you work here. We will stay with the devnet, so I will put the letter D here. For the mainnet, you will need the number 1 in place. The transfer transaction factory prepares a transaction required to transfer native EGLD tokens. We need to call the create transaction for native token transfer with some configuration. We must define how much of EGLD we want to send and where. The native amount here is reserved only when you want to move the EGLD value. You won't use the field to transfer ESDTs. Remember that the EGLD token has 18 decimal places, and we must pass a big int value. You can use some libraries to parse and format amounts, like BigNumber.js. But let's keep it simple here. As in the previous video, we must fetch and increment the nonce through our user instance. The following steps are also similar. We need to serialize the transaction for signing. Then, we need to sign the transaction. Finally, we need to broadcast it and catch the transaction hash. Okay, it looks good. Let's see if it works. No, it's not. I think I forgot to install npm packages when I cloned the repository. Let's quickly fix that. Still, something's wrong with the imports. Yes, there are typos in the names of the helpers imported from the SDK library. Let's fix it and move on. Yep, and here we have it. The transaction was successfully sent, and we can check its state on the MultiversX Explorer. As you can see, we have the same amount, the sender and the receiver. Now let's move to the ESDTs, and first, let's check how to send the fungible tokens. We will create a separate file and move some logic from the previous one. There are differences, but generally the flow is similar. We will use the same constructors for the transfer transaction factories, but use a different method here. Instead of create transaction for native token transfer, we use create transaction for ESDT token transfer. We also must remove the native amount field and replace it with token transfers. Yes, it is an array of token transfers. We will back to multiple transfers later. For now, let's define a transfer for fungible tokens. Token transfer and token are imported from SDK. We need to provide the fungible token identifier and amount to send. We already have an ESDT fungible token issued using our wallet. Let's copy its identifier. Now we need to provide the amount to send. Remember to take into consideration the decimal places. In this case, we have 18 decimal places, the same as the native EGLD. Okay, let's check if it works. Something is wrong here. I think we have the wrong structure for our token transfers. Yes, we need to use the token class here. Let's fix it. Yep, now it works. Again, we can check the result in the MultiversX Explorer. Okay, let's move to the next token type, semi-fungible token. We already have SFT issued on our demo wallet so that we can work with it. You find the identifier in the Explorer. Let's also create a separate file for the SFT token. We will need to copy almost all of the logic. Besides the identifier, there will be some small changes. First, let's change the identifier. In this case, the identifier is the collection identifier. What is new here is the nonce of the SFT. We need to provide it additionally. In this case, we have the first SFT in the collection, so the nonce will be 1. If you don't know how semi-fungible tokens are issued, don't worry. You'll find everything in the documentation, and we will cover that in the following videos. We need to provide the nonce as a big number. We also don't operate with decimal places here, so the 10 means 10 and this is the amount to send. Okay, let's check if it works. Everything is good. We can now move and check the non-fungible tokens. For this demo, I minted some using the demo Elven Tools collection. Elven Tools helps with issuing and managing NFT collections on the MultiversX blockchain. If you are curious, Google it. We can take one of them and use it in our demo. Like with the SFTs, the identifier here is the identifier of our NFT collection. We will also need to pass the nonce. The process is very similar to the SFTs. Again, we need a new file for the NFT transfer, and I will copy and modify the code from the SFT file. Let's change the identifier and the nonce, and we need to set the amount to 1. For NFTs, it will always be 1. These are non-fungible, so we can't have more than 1 with the same nonce. And that's it. Let's check if it works. Okay, so we have separate transactions for all 3 types. Now, let's look at how we can send all of them in a single transaction. It is super simple with a transfer transaction factory. What we need to do is to add more than 1 token transfer to our list. We will use the same code. We will add more token transfers from previous examples. For NFT, we need to change the nonce because the previous one has already been sent, so we don't own it anymore. It's that simple. We only need to prepare token transfers and put them together in one place. The whole process is the same. Let's test it and check in the MultiversX Explorer. You should see one transaction with all 3 transfers. Okay, that's it. Transfer factories are super helpful. If you want to experiment with transfers, you can use build.dev to issue different types of tokens. Switch to the DevNet and try it. Thanks. Until the next one.